with a better system.
So what is the likelihood of this plan passing? Joining us now for a fair and balanced debate, Fox News contributor Tony Sayegh. He is a national political correspondent for Talk Radio News Service, and Democratic strategist Zerlina Maxwell, a contributor for Ebony.com. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
So, Zerlina, I'll start with you. Past House Republican efforts on this have failed. The president's health care law, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of it. What's the likelihood that it'll pass this time around?
Zero. There's no chance of this happening. It could pass the House, certainly, but there's no chance that it will become law. I mean, Americans voted in November. Mitt Romney ran on repealing Obamacare, and Americans decided that they didn't want to go that route. And so there's no chance of this actually happening.
So, Tony, what do you think? Why is he doing this again?
Look, you mentioned rightly, Heather, that Republicans in the past have taken, I think, too much of an ideological and political approach to reversing the negative impact of Obamacare. They've passed House resolutions which really are not binding. They're kind of meaningless. They're highly symbolic. What I think is very smart of Congressman Ryan is he's making this large conversation about Obamacare part of a budget process. And he said also in this interview a very positive sign, which is we now, for the first time in 4 years, may actually have a budget proposal coming from the Democratic Senate. It's been crazy that we've operated without one for 4 years. So instead of doing what a lot of conservatives wanted him to do, which is to attach this as some sort of rider to the continuing resolution, he's now making it part of the larger conversation that looks at the next 10 years and makes it part of his budget proposal. When then reconciled with the Senate, will produce something that does focus on the fact that Obamacare costs twice as much as initially projected, and that is a number as a fact. And that is a fact. That's the CBO number, who scored it at 750 and now tells us it's 1.3 trillion. Okay, and it also puts it in the larger context of balancing the budget, which is something that this president has shown a lack of interest in doing, but we need for the future of our country.
And that's the question, Zerlina. Can we afford Obamacare as it stands now, when now we have all of these new numbers that are out by the Congressional, Budget Office that says it's going to cost, so much more?
Well, I think that many of the provisions in Obamacare that are the most essential in cutting the deficit haven't even gone into effect yet. I mean, many of the provisions don't start until 2014. So the idea that Obamacare is destroying health care, when Republicans had an opportunity to do all of the things Paul Ryan is talking about during the 8 years of George W. Bush, and they didn't do anything to get patient-centered health care for all Americans. So I don't really believe him now that he really wants to take it seriously. And Obamacare is the law of the land. We should learn to live with it. Americans are going to like it once all of it goes into effect.
Well, you mentioned Americans voting for it, but here's something else that's come out, and I found this interesting. Just last week, the Joint Committee on Taxation, they released this report. It contained about 100 different pages, talked about, 21 tax increases that are contained within Obamacare, of which a dozen of them target Americans earning less than $200,000 for singles, $250,000 for couples. Was that something that all of these voters who voted for it were aware of? I don't think so.
Not at all. And let's correct the record for a moment. Obamacare as an individual policy was not a referendum item in November, unless I'm mistaken. If you look at the most recent polling from the Kaiser Family Foundation, which has done the most effective analysis on popular opinion on Obamacare, only 36% of Americans support Obamacare as it stands today. So this whole idea that the president got reelected and therefore there should be no questions asked about this enormously costly project that's going to add another federal entitlement that the president clearly has no idea how he's going to pay for is ridiculous, number one. Number two, you point out a very effective point, Heather, which is the president promised no middle class, no middle income taxpayer would be negatively affected by Obamacare. We now know out of these 23 taxing provisions, many, like the tanning tax, the tax on health savings accounts, are going to hit any American who benefits from that service, number one. Number two, premiums. We were promised that premiums would go down. The president said $2,500 a cost of premium would go down. The IRS just this month announced that the average American family of four will see their premiums go up by $4,000. That's not what was promised with Obamacare.
That's not,
I have to wrap it up there. But something else I did want to ask about, we can't get to, is all of this coming on the heels of the meeting last week, with Paul Ryan. So maybe this means that there is some sort of compromise in the works. We'll see what happens as we move forward, and he presents his budget on Tuesday. Okay. Thank you both for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great to see you.
Well, coming up...